In this episode, I'm having a conversation with Dan Purcell, and Dan is here to help you get your marriage on. Yes, Dan is here to talk about sex, specifically how you can enter into strengthening, robust conversations about sexual intimacy in your marriage with your wife. Because too often we feel embarrassed or sheepish when we get into those conversations. Dan wants you to know there's nothing to fear. He's here to give you a guide and a path that you can follow so you can enter into those conversations about sexual intimacy and strengthen your marriage. And he'll also share how his entrepreneurial journey and how a conversation with a potential client transformed his passion for computer science and entrepreneurship into a passion of helping couples in their marriage strengthen their sex life. My conversation with Dan Purcell starts right now. Hello, my friend. Welcome to this episode of the Dads Making a Difference podcast. My name is Cam Hall. I'm your host and founder of the Dads Making a Difference Mastermind. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Dan Purcell to the podcast. Dan is the founder of Get Your Marriage On and creator of the Intimately Us app and the Just Between Us app. You're going to hear about those in the show, but Dan is a marriage specialist. He and his wife, Emily, have created Get Your Marriage On to help married couples strengthen their relationships through positive, healthy, strengthening conversations about sex. Yes, guys, sex. You know, that thing we don't want to talk to our wife about. We just want to involve ourselves in because we often don't know the answers. We don't know what questions to ask, and we often think we know more than we do. But Dan is here to give us a guide, give us a path to how we can enter into a practice in our home that is going to strengthen our sex lives and increase intimacy in our marriages. He is also going to tie in how his very unique entrepreneurial journey in his passions as an entrepreneur and business owner led him down a path where one awkward conversation with a business client transformed his trajectory forever and the trajectory of his family and his relationship with his wife. Listen to this episode. Take some notes. Listen to Dan. He's a guy with a ton of energy. I'm so excited to have him on here because, guys, we all need this guidance. We want to have a healthier sex life in our marriages. We want to increase intimacy with our wives so that we can live that fit, healthy, fulfilled life with our family. Guys, I want that for you. So listen closely. My conversation with Dan Purcell starts right now. Hi, Dan. It's good to see you. Welcome to the Dads Making a Difference podcast, brother. I'm glad to have you here.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah,
this is good.
I love your energy. I love what you stand for. And I've loved the conversations that we've been able to have prior to this interview because I just, as we were talking back and forth, and your dad, your husband, you're passionate about those responsibilities in your life, but you're also a driven entrepreneur. And I admire that about you. And there's some similarities in your story that I can relate to. And I know that a lot of our listeners will relate to as well. So, Dan, why don't we take a moment right now? Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? This is a chance to brag about your family, a little bit about yourself, your family, and your background.
I've been married 19 years, and my wife and I have 6 children. And our oldest is a senior in high school, soon to graduate high school. And he's a big avid tennis player. So he's going to go play collegiate tennis. Amazing. And my youngest is 5. And so it alternates boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl. We have 3 of each.
Yeah, that's fine. That's a great pattern. That's a great pattern. You couldn't have planned it any better.
No, I joke saying it took a lot of practice, but we nailed down. We got the pattern nailed. Let's see. We live in a beautiful part of the world, southern Utah, and we're pretty outdoorsy. We like to go hiking, mountain biking, camping, and we have a lot of national parks and state parks around us. So it's a lot of stuff to do.
I can imagine that with 6 kids, life is pretty busy and it's pretty active.
Yes. Yep. Very active. Yep.
Yeah, cool. And so you have 6 children. Your oldest is graduating from high school. That's an exciting adventure. How do you feel about that?
I'm excited for him. I He's just really maturing a lot, and I look forward to like this next chapter with him. A lot of people like we're worried about the teenage years with our kids, but to me, the teenage years have been really exciting and fun because of all the
Amazing.
great things you can do with your kids. So that's the way I view it, and that's the way it's been. But I am sad because I'm going to miss him.
Yeah, of course, of
You know,
course.
being gone.
And so he's your oldest. How old is your youngest?
5 years old.
Okay, so that's quite the spread.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you have your hands full, you're on your feet quite a bit. You've been married 19 years. What's your wife's name?
Emily.
Emily. Awesome. And so you and Emily have been married 19 years. You have an amazing family. Uh, what do you do together? I'm curious when guys come on and they have a large family. What are some of the activities that you like to do? Because when you're speaking, getting into the outdoors, you're speaking my language, and I'm always curious.
That's it. Yeah, yeah. It's like when you say get together, I mean get together with just my wife or as the whole
As
family.
as a family, like if your family is like heading into the weekend, like
Uh-huh.
what's the thing that you're looking forward to?
There's a lot to do outdoors where we are. So we do a lot outdoors. We did a hike the other day. It was 2 miles in, 2 miles out. And we got to this natural forming arch that looks like an elephant trunk.
Okay.
And there's also another hole where the eye can be. So it's this huge rock formation that looks like an elephant. And so that was really cool.
Incredible.
Pickleball is really popular here.
Yeah.
And so we play pickleball in the summer, just swimming. We do a lot of swimming.
Excellent.
Um, Tennis. Let's see. As a family, we like to play board games and card games. So
So typical family stuff,
yeah,
the
yeah,
typical family
uh-huh,
stuff,
yeah,
but not a typical family because you know you and your wife Emily are very uh, a passionate couple, and we'll get into that a little bit later in your story. But why don't you share a little bit about before we get into get your marriage on, intimately us, and that's where we're heading our conversation. Why don't you share a little bit about your background and what got you into the profession of being an entrepreneur and starting your business?
yeah. Entrepreneurship's always been interesting to me, partially because my dad is an entrepreneur also. So I kind of see him, and I kind of grew up with that kind of an idea. I've also really liked computers. When I was 14 years old, I really wanted to take a computer programming class that my local community college was offering at the time. I don't know how I heard about it, or maybe my dad suggested it. And like, yeah, that really interests me. So he signed me up. And then a few days before class was supposed to start, this is like a summer class, by the way. And they got a call from the university or from the college saying they didn't have enough students enroll. So unless they get more students before the start of the school day, they're going to have to, cancel the class. And I was devastated.
Yeah.
So my dad signed himself up. He signed up my mom. He signed up my grandparents who didn't even live near us, and just enough people that they carried the class. And on the first day of class, he dropped he dropped the
Amazing.
class. He dropped everyone, but they had to carry the class because they had already started.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So like, so that's kind of that I kind of grew up with. Like,
Had your back.
yes, he had my back, but he was also very creative at making things happen. When I was in further along in high school, our high school cheerleaders every year did a fundraiser on Valentine's Day called Data Match. They'd pass out a personality test to the student body. You'd fill it out, they'd send it in, and they'd get results, and they'd tell you who you're most compatible with in your
Okay.
class. And they'd sell the results for like $2 each or whatever. And everyone wanted to know like
Yeah, that's incredible.
who's in it,
What?
right? That envelope is sealed, and you're like, what's in here?
Yeah, that's a smart idea.
But I went to them like, I can program that. I bet I could write a program that will do that whole like number crunching, like finding who you're compatible with. And I don't know how in the world I convinced them, but they said, yeah, you do it. So instead of sending it off to that other company, I did it. And so I made my own personality test, and we distributed it to the student body. And it's just like my first little business, right? There's so many things I didn't know at the time, like I could write the program, and it worked when I had like my test data set with like 30 records. But when we expanded it to hundreds of records, my program would always crash. And so I had to like learn more computer programming beyond what I knew to get that. And I also didn't take into account how intensive data entry is.
Yeah.
because we had hundreds of responses. This is before the internet days. It was it was printed out, all the survey info. So I hired my neighbor kid like 50 cents. So I had to write another program for the data entry to give to him so he could do it at his house and bring it over like on a floppy disk or USB drive or something, so I could load that data into the master program. But it was kind of fun. Like I was like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I could figure this out. And maybe it was a little bit of hubris, but because I get into it and I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the entrepreneurial spirit, right? Like,
Absolutely.
I can at least figure this out as I go, like that confidence in yourself. So I kind of developed that early on.
And so you developed that, you started thinking that way. You're 14 years old and you're like, yeah, I can do this. I can, I'm interested in computers. You get into high school, you create this program for a fundraiser that ends up being maybe your first like side gig where you bring the neighbor kid in. Did you follow that passion with computers into post-secondary university?
Yes, I did. So I got my degree in computer science, and I graduated with like a 3.96 GPA. Like I got straight A's except for an A- or something.
Okay.
I was a really good student, but
You're
I
also
worked
the
really
kid who
hard.
Volunteered for a summer course. So
As a kid,
I can
I
see
was
that
passionate about it. Right.
That's awesome. That's cool.
So I wouldn't volunteer for a math class or
fair
an
enough.
English class.
Yeah.
It was just so fun. So I had that drive, but I was also a good student, meaning I spent a lot of time on my homework. And when I graduated, the most amazing, interesting thing happened to me that I just did not see coming. And I had something called free time. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Free time. Like,
no
what is this stuff?
Yeah.
I know. There's no group project due. There's no program due. There's no paper to write. There's no like textbook I had to read, whatever. It's like I could just do whatever. And I got a job right out of college doing some as a software engineer for a computer security company. And so I'd go to work in the morning, come home in the evening, and it was just my wife and I, and our son was about to be born. But I had this free time. I'm like, what am I going to do? And continuing my education was important to me. And I seriously toyed with the idea of getting a master's degree until I realized a master's in computer science, you don't write very much. You don't write a lot of programs. You just write a lot of research papers. That's like the last thing I want to do. I wanted to code. I didn't want to write papers about coding.
Yeah.
So I like, well, what can I learn that school won't teach me? And so I was earning some money for the first time in my life around then, and just interested in business in general. So I picked up a few books, and my dad recommended I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
And there's a part in the book where he talks about his wife wanting to get a fancy car, like a Mercedes or something.
Yeah.
But in their marriage, they had agreed that they wouldn't just go buy and spend money on, he calls them doodads, or liabilities. Like we're just not going to just do that. So, but she really wanted the car. So instead of the cash she would otherwise spend on the car, like she found an investment and put that money in the investment instead. And the interest she gained from that investment was enough to pay for the monthly car payments without losing the principal of the investment. So it's like getting a free car for her.
Right.
I'm like, brilliant. That's such a great idea. I want to do that in my life, but I don't have the money for a car. But what can I do? What do I have around me that I can turn into an asset to make it pay for itself, essentially? So the obvious one, of course, is our home internet connection, which we're paying like $65 a month for, right? Yeah. Like I can make money off my internet. So I bought a really cheap computer, put it in the basement, and I started calling my friends and say, hey, I started a web hosting company. Switch your website hosting over to me. I just didn't tell them I was hosting websites on a computer in the basement.
Yeah. On a $65 a month.
Right. Internet. Right. But my thinking was, if I got like $10 a month here and $15 a month there, if I got enough of it, it would add up. We just share the internet connection, right? These aren't high traffic sites. So
yeah,
I could use the internet while I'm hosting sites and whatever. It's just internet. So I would get free internet because I have other people paying my internet bill because I turned my liability of my internet bill into an asset. That was kind of my thinking.
Yeah.
And I went through with that plan and it worked. Except I didn't realize too that people didn't just want websites hosted. They want websites updated and changed and improved and even new websites made. So, and I don't know how to tell people no. So I would
Okay.
like I would make these updates for them and I guess they liked what I did because they started referring their friends to me. And so
Okay.
in a short amount of time, I had like a side job doing website design and I loved it. Website design and updating while I had my day job. So it got to the point where I couldn't fulfill all the work. So I hired some help, some part-time help from the college I had just graduated from. And at one point, I think I had an army of like 4 or 5 part-timers, and one of the part-timers went full-time. And I would wake up at 6 a.m. and I'd run downstairs to the computer and I'd just set up the day for my team. Like,
Yeah.
hey, Joe, you need to take care of this. And Josh, remember that. And so on and so on. That give everyone their assignments. And I'd go to work. During my lunch break, I would like check on them all the time. Like, how's it going? Then come home, family, dinner time, or whatever. My wife's tired from a busy day for her. She's asleep, and I'd go back down and I'd work till like midnight. And this is just going on like week after week after week. And my Saturdays are consumed with my new side business, and that's kind of where my heart was.
It's
And
interesting. You use the word consumed because
uh-huh.
and I think that's an important word to recognize right now because you found something you were passionate about and you're excited about. And now you're just diving in. And we will often do that where we'll just dive in and we won't think about other stuff. And, but you also said, I was, consumed by this, but it was still your side thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I can
Well,
imagine balancing
consuming
that was
it
tough.
occupies my brain space. Like when I have
Yeah.
nothing else to think about, what do you think about? Well, I think about my business. Like,
Yeah.
how are we going to solve this problem? How are we going to find more clients? How are we going to, recruit more help? Just things like that. It's just, that was fun.
Probably things that your dad taught you or you saw in your dad too growing up, right? That he was
Probably,
probably
yeah.
always thinking, yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Very different industry than what my dad pursued. But yeah, still, it's like, hey, we can make this happen. Like, there's a world of possibility here. What can we do with it? And it's kind of fun, creative work. And when I figured out how to get enough business to support my family, I made the decision to leave the security of that, nice, comfortable full-time job to do my own thing. And it was a very scary move. And it was tough the first few years. I don't know how we did it, but we eked out an existence. We had savings, thank goodness, and we had no like we didn't have car payments. Our only we only had a mortgage as far as debt goes. So things were like, in that sense, we were really blessed with that. And I married a woman who knows how to live frugally too. So in fact, in our marriage, I'm more the spender than she is.
Yeah.
But I was just grateful that we could kind of make that happen. It was a real struggle and a grind for the first few years.
Wow. And so you leave your full time job, you have this side thing that's become your business. And so, how long did this business last? Is it still going? Like, what was the trajectory?
Yeah, that was 17 years ago, and it's still going.
Amazing.
Yeah, and
But no,
now it's evolved, of course, over the years. That business, doing website design, grew and grew. There are years we'd have 50% growth year after year, like 3 or 4 years in a row. We got to the point where we had 32 employees. Most, if not all, of the employees were local. Like we would, so we kind of bucked the trend of a lot of businesses did remote work. We wanted a different kind of a team, a different kind of a culture. Most of us were in-house. We had over 800 clients all over the world, and we just did a lot of like really nice custom website development for these clients.
amazing. And so
And then
this business,
mm-hmm.
it so you have this business, you have 32 people working for you, and you're doing custom work. People are happy with it. Did you ever feel like getting out of it?
I got really burnt out because there's a big problem with my business model in that, in essence, we're no different than maybe an accounting firm or a law firm where we offer a professional service, but we're trading our hours for dollars. So let's say we were on track, say we made $2 million in a year as a company. If I wanted to get to double that to 4 million, I would have to somehow figure out how to double our billable hours. And that meant going from 32 employees to 64 employees, which is another order of magnitude more complex.
Right.
And so the scale of that wasn't as interesting. And it, ironically, we made the same profit margin as a smaller company as we did when we were a bigger company. So having more employees didn't necessarily yield more profit. So scaling a business model like that, just I couldn't figure out how to do that effectively with the resources we had. So yeah, I did feel like getting out of it. Like it was a little of there's a point where it's I guess burnout. Or it's like, oh, I'm working so hard for so little. That kind of a feeling kind of haunts you at times. And that's when you start daydreaming about a McDonald's job or a janitor at a school job. Sounds so good right now. Like
you
where you
just
don't
go,
have to
you
think.
work, go home.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, it's because you go to work usually and it's like there's fires to put out, and 70% of my time and effort is like dealing with that than just like being creative. Right. It's kind of sucked the fun out of it. And
can I ask a question? Because I think this is important for some of the guys on here to hear, because there's guys listening to this right now who want to start their side gig, or they have an idea of how they're going to impact the life of other guys around them or fathers. And maybe they have a side business, and they hear people who are doing, and I can give an example, like you hear on social media, this marketing, you'll see every business coach, sponsored coach, get to your first $10,000 a month, get to your 20,000, and it's all these numbers, right? But they don't understand that just because on the top line, it says you're making this much per month in your business, doesn't necessarily mean that's going into your pocket. And you mentioned that you built this business that was doing quite well, but your profit margins hadn't increased as much, but you had a much larger business and you were putting more time to what you weren't passionate about. And I think it's a fair warning for people to know that business isn't always rainbows and butterflies and things that are going to be great. It requires you to be, like you say, consumed by it, work hard in it, push hard in it, but realize that sometimes you have to realize that the time I'm putting in isn't worth what I'm getting out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but there's a little silver lining, because I got a knock, actually an invitation to lunch. Someone had just moved to my town from a bigger city, and they were setting up shop, and they had a software company that was just on the verge of, they thought, just on the verge of taking off. They got signed a big contract with a big shipping company and expected like huge growth in their business. And their big problem is recruiting. And they look over at me and like, how in the world do you have like so many programmers and like designers and marketing people? Like, you have such a great machine. How did you do that? So I shared with them, like, this is how I recruit, and this is kind of what we do, and this is kind of our company culture and why people are attracted to our company and things like that. And we left that lunch with them asking if I'm interested in selling my company. Not because they were interested in web design, but because they needed programmers and marketing people and graphic designers and all the management layers in between and sales staff and everything that I had that they could just plug into their company.
Right. They want a team.
Right. So they can scale fast. Otherwise, they'd have to piece together a team slowly, like I did. It's just, and they thought they could get some investor money, and like, this was their do or die moment. Without people, we're not going to survive. Right. So we need this. And so I put on my best poker face and like, I'll think about it. But inside I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Buy my company.
So good. Yeah. Right. And so I sold my company to them. And the conditions of my sell were 10% upfront and the balance due over 18 months. But I would accrue interest. So if they can make those payments earlier, then they don't have to pay as much, kind of an idea. And I was so thrilled. So my wife and I, this was a life-changing amount of money too. We're going to really make a lot of money. So my wife and I like made a plan, like we're going to pay off our mortgage completely. So we're going to be completely debt-free, put away money for our kids, for their mission funds, for their college funds. I was going to take care of, and maybe have some money left over for a fancy car. I really wanted a Tesla. Like, I really wanted that. Like, this is going to be so cool. And we can do it all. We can do it all. I was just so excited.
Yeah.
So we all went to work for the new company, and it was pretty good because for the first time in a very long time, I got a paycheck. Can you believe that? Like, they would pay me money to work there. I didn't have to I didn't just get the leftovers of what I was left over the month. Like, I was guaranteed this amount of money. But I quickly learned that I'm not a great employee. And here's some of the things I learned working for them. No matter how hard I worked or how little, like whether I did the minimum or I poured my heart into my work, I got paid the same.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that was a big revelation. So I wasn't motivated. Like, if I have creative energy, I wanted to put it in other stuff. So I quickly found a little side business to kind of put my creative energy into as my creative outlet. Yeah. And it wasn't anything big. I just some inventions or whatever I had in my mind. But I'd probably bring 70% of my creativity work, but not 100%, because hey, it doesn't matter. Right? Yeah. And then another thing I learned too is I do really well, not as a cog in a machine personally, but I do really well directing, envisioning. I'm the visionary type. I'm not the execution type. And good businesses need both, and they're both equally valuable. But I was put into more of a worker role, not a visionary role, I guess you could say. And so, although I do have skills and I could do that role really well, it wasn't, I think, fit to my talents to the best capacity. But it was a good company, and heck, half the guys there are people I
brought in.
Love. Right? These are my people.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. 11 months later, 11 months into this, again, our agreement's 18 months. Then I get that payout. 11 months in, the owner, he says, "Hey, can I take you to lunch?" And he never takes me to lunch. This is on a Friday.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, all right, let's go. So he takes me to lunch, and he basically tells me over lunch that they have no money left. They have just enough to make payroll on Monday. Wow. He's going to have to lay off everyone except for a skeleton crew. And the reason why he's taking me to lunch is basically telling me there's absolutely no way he can ever pay me what he owes me. And that was pretty sad. I cried in the closet for a weekend. And you can experience all those range of emotions, right? Because as a business owner, when you start a business, you put your heart and soul into building this thing.
Yeah.
And then you pull all-nighters. I thought all-nighters ended at college, but no, they don't. No, in my business, there's just you work so hard, and so when someone wants to buy your company, it's like you're on a high, right? Yeah. It's like all that work is now worth it. I'm finally seeing something that I can feel is like, I can look to this. It's like this. It made everything lead up to that worth it. So that was the high. And then to find out that's taken from you is a huge low. And so that was a big, so that was pretty sad. But he's firing everyone or letting everyone go, right? And these are good people. These are my people.
Those are your people. And this is your baby. You built
this is some skilled people, right? So I cherry picked the 3 best programmers I had ever hired and said, "Hey, let's go start over. Let's start a new company together." And so we did that, and that was 2006. And so we did. And ever since then, so that's kind of the reboot of that company.
It's amazing. And here you still continue. passionate about what you're doing, but I do have some questions before we get into what's happening now for you, because I think we can't lose sight of the fact that you have many children in your home, you know, and a wife who wants you at home and wants you to be
Mhm.
present. And it sounds like you are a through and through entrepreneur. Like you want to hustle, you're creative, you're driven. Not to say that you're not a loving present dad, but I'm sure it was difficult in those times, especially when you had these dreams of like, hey, we're going to get bought. They're going to buy this company. We have all these things we want to do. And then they wrecked it, your baby.
Yes.
And these are your people. And you're
Mhm.
like, okay, we're going to start over again. Here we go. And you probably had this spark in you. But at the same time, you had to be dad and you had to be a husband. How did you
Mhm.
balance that?
Not very well. I don't know. You know how I told you early on, when I started my side hustle right out of college, like I'd get up really early and do some work and
Yeah.
then come and at
Yep.
night after my wife's asleep, I'd stay up later and do work.
Yeah.
Like that became a habit. And so that became like the operating way we did life for like 12 years.
Hmm.
And so but I still spent, luckily I live in a smallish town where like my commute to work's like 10 minutes. It's not horrible like you hear about people in traffic for a half
Hours.
hour each way. Right, exactly. um um and I just did not work on Sundays, never did.
Mhm.
So Sunday it was always open, and I would try to limit my Saturday work. And so, ironically, Saturdays were my busiest day of the week because that's the day I crammed everything else in, like
Yeah.
housework, laundry, like
All of it.
shopping, like everything. And like, all right, let's take this kid on a date, and I'd kind of have a schedule. All right, it's your turn. Let's go have fun or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of a high energy person anyway, so like Saturday comes, I got it like planned out. Like, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna have fun with this and whatever. So I guess I don't think I was a neglectful dad, but it, I I also have a very patient wife who probably
Mm.
wouldn't have said anything to me if
Yeah.
I was off balance. So looking back, there's definitely things I could have done better at. But amongst all that, I still managed to uh, have a pretty good relationship with my kids, I think. Um, although what happened next kind of put everything upside down.
Yeah. Share. Yeah.
So
What
we
happened next?
started this new company with the remnants of my old company after that company that bought us out like ran out of money. And a few months later, again, I'm hustling, right? I'm doing everything I can to find work. Um, a couple comes in to my office and wants to hire us to make an app, but not just an app. They want us to make a game for them.
Okay.
And we're thinking like video game, like Angry Birds or Bejeweled, or like video game, like an
Yeah.
app. And we're like so excited because every nerd's computer programmer's dream is to get paid to make a game. So we have no idea so we're in this meeting, and it's not a game like that. It's a bedroom game, aka a
Okay.
sex game. And one thing you got to know about me is that's probably the last thing you'd ever hear me like wanting to get involved in.
Yeah.
I was blushing through the whole meeting, like, I can't believe this, really. Um, but there was something really sincere about this couple because they're telling me, Dan, ever since we really worked on our sex life, our marriage has really taken off. Like the bond between us is stronger than ever. We're having more fun. Like we communicate better. We parent together. Like there's just so much goodness to this.
Yeah.
And by the way, here's websites that we found with really good info. You should
Yeah.
check them out.
Oh wow.
There's like these sex position sites, they're
How,
not that graphic. Like you can check this out. And like
how
there's this.
comfortable were you with that?
Totally not. Like, I don't even Google my sex questions. Like,
You're too scared
because
of
I'm
what's gonna
afraid
pop
what's
up.
going to
Yeah.
come. Yeah, exactly. Like, my goodness, this is like a landmine, but is it not? Because there's this couple sitting there, like, you know, almost like bearing their testimony to me, so to speak, of how amazing their
Mhm.
uh
Relationship
this,
is. Yeah.
yes, and how good sex is. And it was just like a concept that I just could not like I would not be comfortable with that years before. So I went home that night and said, "Hey, Emily, what do you think? What do you think about this stuff?"
Yeah.
And that opened a new chapter in our life that we never really considered before. And I learned a lot because we stayed up till like 2 a.m. that night talking about our intimate life, our sex life, and
Yeah.
everything else. It's probably the most vulnerable conversation we've had in our marriage to that point, at this level. And what I learned a lot from Emily in there is how much she values time with me, and how, the love languages. Have you heard of the five
Yes,
love
of
languages
course.
before?
Yeah.
So we did the quiz around this time, and number one for me was like physical touch.
Yeah.
And the last one for me was quality time.
Okay.
And my wife was flip-flopped the opposite way. Number one for her is quality time. And the last was like quality, like physical touch. I don't know if that was it. But the point is, what she found valuable from me was the thing that I found hardest to give up, which was quality time, right? Because I'm ambitious. I've got big goals. I want to earn that Tesla.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever. I want, like, I got to hustle now. And I want to put all this time and energy and my creative energy into building this company. But I was giving her my leftovers.
Yeah.
And
But
that's
you
what came
probably
out.
didn't feel that way. You probably felt you were doing the right thing for what you wanted for you and your family, and you're pushing because in your personality, that's who you are. And if you felt a little uncomfortable getting into the conversation with the couple, like, I know a lot of guys will feel that way, Dan. Like, you mentioned the love languages. Guys will say physical touch, like that often comes out as like the number one for many guys, but they don't. And then it flip flops for their wife, who's quality time. Guys like, well, I do give you time. I'm like, yeah, well, 10 minutes at the end of the day to talk about how the day went isn't quality time.
No, it's different. There's you said, like, Dan, but you probably at the time thought you were doing the right thing. And if I were to be really honest with myself, work became like, I'm going to use the word addiction, but I don't mean like
No, I know. Okay.
dependency addiction, right? It's like more like, how things like to be in homeostasis, like
Yes.
work, right? I was comfortable when I had a lot going on. I'm more comfortable when I have too much going on. If there's not too much going on, I start to feel uncomfortable. I go on vacation where there's nothing going on, and I'm just jittery the whole time. Right? Because I'm more comfortable when there's a lot going on, right? So I would create circumstances in my life. I'd manifest these things where I would always overbook myself. I would always overextend myself. And because I was comfortable being overextended.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs fall into this trap, because from the outside in, it looks like you're being productive, or look how creative you're being, or look at what you can produce, right? And there's you feel good in that, but it's but you're comfortable in this element, but it's not necessarily balanced. And that's what I learned that night from my wife.
Amazing.
So it is about sex, but it isn't just about sex. It's about building an intimate connection where you're a full partner with your spouse.
So where did Get Your Marriage On come from? From that conversation?
So kind of. So again, we're both really skeptical, but we both realized that when it comes to sex, there's a lot more we can learn that we didn't know before. Mm-hmm. So being courageous, entrepreneur, venture type people are like, all right, let's figure this baby out. So we bought some books. We're both Christians, so we kind of picked in the same Christian friendly genre. And actually, we found some really helpful books. Usually they're really shy, but no, we found a really good one that kind of like explained like certain technique. Like, I didn't know certain things. Like, I just really didn't.
Yeah.
I'm so ashamed to admit it, but no one talked about these things growing up. And I don't have friends that talk about it openly. If they did, I'd shut down the conversation, maybe not listen. Right. Yeah. So I had that friend, open up about their sex lives made me realize, my goodness, there's more to this. So I did, we read some books together, and we started trying out some stuff together, and it worked. And it was like, holy smokes, that's pretty cool. What else is there? So we try other things. So we were like being really adventurous and trying new things, and all that creative energy that I'd reserved for work was now like redirected towards my marriage and towards my wife. Amazing. Because and then so I'd get really creative in the bedroom and out of the bedroom, and we're starting like not just go on a date like dinner and movie, but like a really creative, elaborate date that took more preparation, because I love this woman. I want to have fun with her. And so we talk about return on investment all the time, especially in business folks, like return on happiness, I guess you could say. What do you invest in that gives you happiness? Right. And work and building businesses really did bring me a lot of joy and happiness. But for every unit of investment, the happiness yield was far higher in my relationship with my wife than any other thing that I've done. Yeah. So I want to put more into my relationship with my wife, because this is great. And so within a few months, I'd say 2 or 3 months, our marriage, we experienced what that couple in my office was experiencing. Like our bond was closer together. Like we're getting along better. We're so flirty with each other. We're Twitter pated, and our kids can tell a difference, right? And the sky is all of a sudden bluer. The grass is greener too. Like all these other things in life just start clicking. Like, holy smokes, this is so good. How come people aren't talking about this? Like, everyone stop, listen. You got to work on this. This is so good. And Get Your Marriage On started in part because there isn't a lot of stuff for marriage and enrichment in our area. So I'll try to make this short. There's another conference in our area that they've done for a few years called the Utah Coalition Against Pornography. Okay. And they bring in speakers and experts. It's like a conference, like breakouts and keynotes, all about pornography and its dangers or whatever. And I'd attend like half the town. I don't know. There's a lot of people that would go, and I'd walk away so scared, like scared for my life, scared for my kids. Like, that's it. We're canceling the internet. Like, don't go outside, kids. It's a dangerous world. This feeling so like closed in. Like I went to a session about human trafficking. I'm like, this is horrible. And then another one about like Snapchat within teens. I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Like, so like the world's coming to an end. That's how I felt, right? And I did not feel like being intimate with my wife after attending that conference. But my personal experience, which I don't deal with pornography personally, but it's not part of my story. But if I ever was tempted to, that temptation is almost zero now, that what I have in my marriage is so authentic, because everything else looks counterfeit. So I went to my friend who's a marriage therapist helping with pornography. And he's also one of the guys that organizes this big conference. Like, you know what you need to do at your conference? Get rid of all those speakers and have speakers that talk about how to have a great sex life, like detailed, like how to, like ABC technique, like this is how you rub this way, or this is the right position. Like, that's what we need, because that, if anything, insulated me, like whatever. And he laughs and chuckles, like, you're right, except this is the wrong forum for that, because there are couples that are really hurt by this, and this is like, they don't even know their spouse anymore because trust is eroded. So telling them to go home and have more sex would actually be counterproductive. Not helping their healing. But he's like, but you could start a conference. Okay. I'm like, yeah, right. Me? Like, yes, I don't know a thing. I don't know a thing. I'm just an introvert. I don't know a thing about conferences or anything. So, you can kind of know where this is going. We put on a conference, and we had 550 people attend for our first conference. And that's amazing. It was amazing. And it was upbeat. It was fun. We had really fun prizes. We had great speakers, and we needed a name for it. So we called it Get Your Marriage On. Kind of like, it's a little edgy. So good. Yeah, I like it. It's like, go get it on, but it's like, Get Your Marriage On. Anyway, so so we did. That's where Get Your Marriage On came.
And,
originated.
and so here you have this, like, I want to call it a newfound passion. You've always had passion for your wife, but this newfound passion together to create this intimate relationship with each other. You're excited about sharing what you've discovered with other people. And now you step into where you can take your skills and your expertise and your background and blend it together with your newfound like creative energy for your relationship with your wife. And you created something really cool, right?
Yes, it's called the Intimately Us app is one of them.
Yes, is
It's a
one of them.
mobile,
Yeah.
it's a mobile app. It's free to download. It's available for Android and iPhone.
Yeah.
And it is a really fun app to just spice things up in the bedroom without all the yuck. So
Yeah.
that's there's games in there, there's how-tos and activities, there's ways you can track things about each other, and it's just some fun. We just added sex positions the other day too. So there's like it keeps growing and expanding with more information.
Yeah, I got to share with the listeners something that's kind of funny. A friend of mine recommended this app to me about, yeah, I want to say 8 months ago. I'm not quite sure. It was quite some time ago. And I put it on my phone, I had the notifications, and I have it open here on my phone. I never open my phone during the interview, but I want to share with the people listening. Like it's great. And I use it. And I think I need to share with my wife that I use it because you have a challenge each day. And yesterday's was great. It was like high five your spouse every time you walk by them. So I guess high fiving Kim, hey, all day. And at the end of the day, she's like, what was that about? That was kind of fun. And so I was like, oh, well, actually, here it is. And so I've had this app on my phone for quite some time. And when I reached out to Dan to be on the podcast, because I knew he was doing amazing things, I started going down the rabbit hole. Like I always research my guests, and I know that you've done such good work in this area, and you were highly recommended to come on. And I'm like, okay, I got to get him to tell a story. And then I looked through the things you've done. I'm like, hold up a second, I have this app on my phone, so it was really cool to be able to connect with.
Come full circle that
Full
way.
circle, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
So if you're listening to this right now, as soon as you're done this, go download the Intimately Us app. It is great.
Thank you. Yeah. So we've built apps. Another app we've done in the space is called Just Between Us. It's a chat app for couples. Like me, we have kids, and my wife and I like to flirt over text messaging. And so we don't want our kids seeing what we message each other. So it's a completely password protected, double encrypted app. And what makes it different from any other chat app out there is it only lets you pair it with one other person only. So you can't accidentally send something to someone else, even on that same platform. So
right after the send button, when you're like, come back, come back, come back.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no sending something to your kid's principal or your mother-in-law.
Yeah.
So, and it does photos as well as video too. So
excellent. So Intimately Us and Just Between
Us. Between Us. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very cool. And then with Get Your Marriage On, do you still have conferences and you still are doing this?
Yes, we've switched to more retreats. We found retreats to be more effective.
Yeah.
I do coaching. So I've been coaching for about 2 years, couples, and I love working with couples and helping them. Most of my clients are couples in marriages where one person wants sex and the other one doesn't, or there's a difference in desire. And I help both of them look at their dynamic and see how they're both contributing to the problem so they can fix it.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Any other projects on the go right now?
We have a podcast called Get Your Marriage On, and it's a kind of a spicy podcast, but it's good. I would say it's a married PG.
Okay. Yeah.
Or married PG-13, I guess you could say. If you're married, we're not shy about talking about many topics, but really focusing on especially the relationship and the dynamic with couples on those things.
Incredible. It's incredible to hear where your journey has taken you, because we think back to the beginning of this conversation, and you're just a guy who was like really driven and passionate about creating using technology. And it led you into a job that wasn't really fulfilling the creative side of things. And so you started a side gig. And then that became the thing that you dove into. You went through that experience of selling it, not selling it, starting it over again. And yet it comes back into your life where you can use this skill set to make a huge impact in the relationship and strengthen your family long term. And now you're helping other couples and families do the same, and it's incredible. So good on you, man. I think this is so cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I think my next question for you, Dan, is, as a dad, you have all these things going on, business things, and they're amazing things. But as a dad personally, what's an area of growth that you're passionate about right now, or something that you're focused
on? For me, it is, I'll get a little vulnerable real quick, but, I feel like a fruit tree that needs a good pruning. I have energy, I have ideas, and creation is where I thrive, or so I think. So I'd like to put off new branches, new branch. But pretty soon the tree doesn't look like a tree anymore. It looks like this big mess. So in fact, ouch, this has been what I've been working on lately, is just journaling all the things that are on my mind and all the things that I'm going through, and really working on a pruning project of all the things I have going on. What can I cut back on? Because if you, like, a good tree won't produce great fruit if it's growing everywhere.
Right.
So I'm trying to prune.
Yeah, I love it. That's good.
And that includes being a dad, like, of my brain space. I don't want to be so starved that I don't give my family the attention my family needs.
Yeah, amazing. So that's great. And man, that power of journaling, there'll be people listening to this, I don't journal, but that is such a powerful tool. So yeah, dig into that. Man, I've really appreciated our conversation. I love just listening to your story, because you do bring a lot of energy, and you do bring like a sense of humor in a way that's like just natural, and it's genuine. And I really appreciated our conversation. I know that guys listening to this have appreciated it as well. If there's men listening to this right now, or women who are listening to this on behalf of their husbands, where can they find you? Where can they find more information about Intimately Us, Just Between Us, Get Your Marriage On? Where can they find this in the podcast?
The website is getyourmarriageon.com. The podcast is called Get Your Marriage On, and I'm on Instagram at Get Your Marriage On. Another great way to find it is just search the App Store for Intimately Us.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely go get that app. It's amazing. And we'll make sure that all that contact information is in the show notes down below. So if you didn't catch that, check the notes. We'll have all the links. We'll have everything that Dan's talked about today. We'll have it all linked up there for you. Dan, thank you for taking the time today and making the time away from your family. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks.